friends. I'm Karen, and this is the Family Food for Moms podcast. We're talking about inspiration for family cooking and dining. This will be the last episode of the year. I'm going to take December off from the podcast, and I'll be back in January, early in January, with some new episodes. So I hope you have a lovely December, and I look forward to being back next year. Today, let's talk about crockpots or slow cookers. Using a crockpot is one of the most time-saving things, and I'm always surprised how many people either don't have a crockpot or don't know how to use theirs, don't know what to cook in it. So hopefully after this episode, you'll know a lot more and you'll feel confident in using a crockpot. One of the great things about a crockpot is they're so cheap to buy. They're one of the cheapest kitchen appliances there is. So have a look near you and see what you can find one for. You also get different size crockpots depending on the size of your family. You can buy a small one or a big one. You can get like bigger than 8 quarts. You can get 6-liter crockpots. Have a look what the options are and get one that works for you. So let's start with some of the best reasons to use a crockpot and why it's so convenient and helpful. So it's kind of set it and forget it cooking. So you prep, you put things into the crockpot, you chop them, you mix them up, and then you just switch it on and walk away. You don't have to stir it or check it. You don't have to do anything for at least 3 or 4 hours. So it's really helpful when you have a busy day and you've got a lot going on, or even if you're going to be out and you put it on a slow setting, then you've got a good 7 to 8 hours before you need to check it. Dinner can be ready when you walk through the door with a quick stir. Number 2, it makes your meat extra tender. I found this to be true for everything except beef. Sometimes the beef doesn't work so well. I find that it works better in the Instant Pot, but everything else definitely, whether it's chicken, lamb, pork, they all work brilliantly in the crockpot or the slow cooker. The slow, low heat breaks down those tough fibers. Pork shoulder becomes amazing pulled pork, and you add the rub and the sauce with it. Chicken becomes juicy, it's not dry. Number 3, the slow cooker saves money. You can use less expensive cuts of meat. You can use dried beans instead of canned and cook them up there. You can use bulk veggies. It uses very little electricity as well. You don't have to have the stove running for hours or the gas plate on. Number 4, it cooks while you're out, which is a real bonus. Whether you're going to the grocery store or to work or to the gym, it can cook while you're out very safely. It can even cook overnight. If you're making something like bone broth on a low setting, it can stay on overnight. Then and you can also do breakfast, like oats overnight. Your flavor gets better the longer it cooks. The flavor is enhanced as it simmers. It doesn't get too hot because the heat is set at a certain level. And so it's fabulous for stews, curries, soups, sauces. And your flavor is fabulous, like it's been on the stove for hours. It's very hard to burn your food. That's a real bonus because the temperature never gets too high. You can set it on high or low and then it'll stay at what it needs to be. Your food won't scorch except if it runs out of water. It can happen, but generally you're doing a sauce-based meal, so it shouldn't burn at all. So you don't have to worry about forgetting about it or getting distracted. If you like to do meal prepping and cook up big batches in advance, the slow cook is fabulous because you can do that easily. It's big. You can do shredded chicken, you can do chili, soups, stews, and then freeze them in portions for your weekday meals. It also stops the kitchen from getting too hot. The oven heats the room, the stovetop can heat the room. So the crockpot hardly does that. So it's a real bonus when it's hot in the summer. Also, it's great for one-pot meals. Sometimes you'll do a veg on the side, but usually you'll put everything in together and cook it at the same time. Your rice, your meat, your sauce, your veggies, you can all cook in there together. So fewer dishes, much easier for cooking and cleaning. Then it's great for beginners and people who say they're not cooks because the recipes are so simple, they're almost foolproof. They require minimal skills, usually just a recipe and some chopping. Kids or teens can safely help because there's no open flame, so it works great. Then you can also cook for a crowd, perfect for big family dinners or parties. At our church meals, people would often bring their whole crockpot full of food and plug it in at church. And then it's great to just stay hot and scoop directly from the crockpot itself. So you don't have to worry about serving dishes. You don't have to worry about reheating it. It's easy. And then it's very versatile. You can make so many more things than just stews. You can make curries, pasta, rice dishes, ribs, breakfast items like oats, hot chocolate, whole chickens work amazingly, desserts, bone broths. So the best types of meals to cook in a slow cooker or crockpot. The crockpot shines with foods that need long, slow heat. So stews and curries, it's perfect for slow simmering, deep flavors. Soups, pop everything in, forget about it, and then it'll slowly cook up to delicious flavor and thickness. Pulled meats like pulled pork or shredded chicken. Beans and lentils are great. They cook slowly and absorb flavor beautifully. Tough cuts of meat, sometimes beef. You could try beef or brisket. Lamb, definitely lamb leg, lamb shoulder. They become meltingly tender. And I love to do even roast chickens in there because they just become fall off the bone tender. If you like a crispy skin, you can crisp it up in the oven afterwards, but it works so great for tender meat. One pot meals using rice or pasta, and then all you need to do is stir it at the end. Mac and cheese in the crock pot is great. And then breakfast casseroles like egg casseroles overnight or overnight oats. So how to use a crock pot step by step. So you shouldn't heat your crock pot empty. It's not like an oven that you turn on in advance. You start by prepping your ingredients. So you're going to do your chopping. You're going to put your liquids into the crock pot, whether it's broth or sauce. And then you chop your meat. You measure everything out. And then you're going to start putting it into the crock pot. It doesn't matter a huge amount what order, but it is helpful to do it in a certain order. So the potatoes, carrots, onions, which are a bit harder, need to go at the bottom. They need the most heat. Then the middle layer is going to be your meat. So your chicken breasts, your lamb on the bone, lamb chops, your pork, anything you're going to be cooking. And then the top would be the softer vegetables and the beans. And then lastly, you'll add your liquids. You want to be careful and add your liquids down the side so that they don't wash seasonings off your meat and vegetables. So as you add your root vegetables and then your meat and then your softer vegetables, you're going to want to season as you go. So maybe you've got a mix of spices and herbs and salt that you've made, or maybe it's certain ones on certain layers. So say you're doing carrots and potatoes, and you can put some salt and maybe some onion powder and some oregano on that layer. Then you're going to put your meat, say it's chicken breasts, then you can put salt, onion powder, some thyme, some smoked paprika, maybe a bit of chili powder. And then on the top, on your softer vegetables, again, you're going to put some salt. And then you're going to get a good amount of seasoning through the food. And then later on, you're going to mix it all up, but it's going to cook as is. You usually want to have at least a third of the height of the food of liquid. You don't need to have a whole lot of liquid unless you're making something like a soup, but you do want to have some liquid so that the crockpot's not going to dry out. Usually you'll get more liquid coming out of the vegetables and the meat while you cook. So you definitely don't want to have too much liquid, otherwise you're basically boiling your food. If you're doing something like a leg of lamb or chicken, a roast chicken, you just have a little bit at the bottom of broth that's going to be made into gravy. You don't want to have too much liquid. So kind of a half an inch, 1 centimeter at the bottom. If you're doing something like a pulled pork, then you're going to put your rub on the meat and then you're going to add your sauce and it cooks in that sauce. Again, it's about a quarter of the height of the crockpot. Then we're going to choose the right heat setting. Most crockpots have two main settings. There'll be the low setting, and that you'll cook things for 6 to 10 hours, so an average of 8. This is good for tough cuts of meat, deeper flavor, things like lamb. And then high, 3 to 4 hours. That's faster, slightly less tender, but works great for chicken, chicken breasts in a sauce, things like that. And then there's the warm setting, which holds the temperature after the food is cooked and doesn't make it get dry or overcooked, but just keeps it warm. So, whenever possible, choose low. The meals are going to come out more tender, especially the beef and your chicken thighs. And it means there's a longer gap for you to do other things. So, low when possible. Sometimes I find if there's not enough time in the day, like I'm going to do a leg of lamb and there aren't 8 hours before dinner, then I'll do 1 to 2 hours on high and then switch it over to low for the last 4 or 5 hours. And then it generally works great. One thing I do find is if I turn a big piece of meat over, it helps with the tenderization. So the top of the leg of lamb may dry out a bit if you don't turn it over. The bottom part will be immersed in the liquid. So about halfway through cooking, turn over your lamb. I think that's the only time it's necessary. Most of the time, when you're doing other things like stews or soups, even roast chicken, you don't need to turn it. Also, don't open the crock pot more than you need to. Once is okay to check if it's tender, but every time you open it, you lose about 15 to 20 minutes of cooking as the heat escapes and it has to heat up again. So don't generally try to open it, but it's helpful sometimes to check how it's doing. If you're doing something like a big piece of meat, like a leg of lamb or chicken, just chop up some onions into quarters and put that or some carrots under the meat to hold it up off the bottom of the crock pot. Then don't overfill the crock pot. 3/4 is the maximum. If it's overfilled, it will cook unevenly and the food may dry out. And it's harder to mix. So one reason also that you may want to open your crock pot during cooking is to give your stew or your soup a quick mix. Or if you're cooking something with rice or pasta, you want to give it a quick mix along the way so that the edges are not dry and the middle full of liquid. We want to let the liquid be evenly spread out. If you're going to be adding dairy or fresh herbs, it's best to do that at the end of the cooking. Milk, cream, yogurt can curdle or get dull, so it's best to add them in the last 30 minutes. If you're going to be doing a bolognese, you can add your pasta in the last half an hour as well, and it should cook well as long as there's enough liquid. It helps the sauce to thicken then. And the same with fresh herbs, they taste best if added towards the end of the cooking. Then remember to taste and adjust your seasoning before serving. It's very important to add more salt or maybe a few fresh herbs at the end. Don't add spices at the end because those need to cook to be, it's very hard on the stomach to have raw spices, and also they cook the flavor into the meat, so you don't need to add them at the end. You can add citrus at the end, splash of lemon, a bit of lemon zest. Those add a lot of flavor, just like the fresh herbs. And then if you want to reduce the liquid a little bit for the last half an hour, you can take the lid off the crock pot and it should help some of the liquid evaporate. Sometimes you take the meat out that's cooked and then you can thicken your sauce and add the meat back. But generally, crock pot recipes don't need that. They are kind of ready. The recipe's set up so that the liquid works correctly. Then some easy and delicious crockpot meal ideas. You can look up recipes for any of these, and I'll put a few at the bottom of this post. Slow cooker chicken curry, a beef stew, a pulled pork shoulder with barbecue sauce. So the chicken curry, 6 to 8 hours on low, the beef stew, 8 hours on low, and the pulled pork, 8 hours on low. Your chicken noodle soup is delicious. Adding the noodles at the end, you'll be adding chicken breasts, carrots, celery, broth, and herbs, 6 hours on low. And the noodles at the end. Bolognese sauce would be minced beef with tomatoes and puree, onion, garlic, herbs, 6-ish hours on low. This wonderful, deep, rich flavor develops, better than on the stovetop. Vegetable lentil soup, very hearty and inexpensive. Crockpot chicken and rice. You add the rice 1.5 to 2 hours before the end so it doesn't turn mushy. shredded chicken breasts like Mexican chicken, barbecue chicken, cheesy sauced chicken, all amazing in the crock pot. Whole chickens, as I've mentioned. Beef or pork ribs in a marinade are fantastic in the crock pot, and they're so tender. You can do a lamb curry. You could do a chili con carne in the crock pot. A Thai chicken curry, creamy Tuscan chicken, barbecue chicken, sausage and bean stew, and of course, overnight oats. So I'll add some recipes, as I said, at the bottom of this post. But I hope that you are brave enough now to try using a crock pot. If you don't want to buy one, maybe you can borrow one and try it out to see if it'll work for you. But it just takes a bit of planning. And then all you need to do each day is rinse out your crock pot, add the next day's food, and cook while you're out. And it's so fabulous and easy. I'm going to be using mine a lot this December. So I hope you have a Merry Christmas, a blessed Thanksgiving before that, and then a Merry Christmas and a wonderful New Year's Day. And I will see you next year.